Imagine encountering a clown that you grew up with as a child. You'd watch him do tricks and antics that would terrify you. But as time progressed, you learned to love that clown. Now, imagine that the years have begun to pass, and that clown is still performing the same tricks that he was doing years ago when you were but a child. And any time that clown does something new and innovative, it butchers that act until it is as dull and as bland as the rest of the clown. My name is Joel Gordon, and to me, the cinematography of horror has become that dead clown. I used to hate horror as a child. My cousin Emily had been a horror fanatic, and any time I'd go to her house, there was bound to be a horror movie on. But I had gone from hating to loving horror movies. But as time progressed, I began to see movies with the same plots, the same type of characters, even their scaring mechanics had become copy and paste. I found that I wasn't afraid of horror movies, not in the sense that I had overcome it, but rather that the horror movie genre had become so repetitive and mediocre that I had lost interest. But that brings up the question, am I alone on this belief? Do others agree with me on the matter? And is horror actually dead? At first, I asked some of my friends at school to see what they thought.
It's not scary at all. It doesn't make me want to crawl under my bed sheets when I go to sleep at night.
From the modern horror I've seen, I feel it's not as scary.
I think people of this modern day and age, like somewhat, they don't try to be original as they can be. I think they somewhat leech off of past movies.
It just feels like I've seen it before to the point where it doesn't even affect me.
It seems they agree with me on the matter. But to gain a better insight, I went to ask others that were not from my generation.
I don't like modern horror right now because I think it's not new, it's not innovative. I think that it's relying more on the audience getting off of seeing torture. It's also doing rehashes of already established horror movies, and I think everything is becoming more of a gimmick than actual original thought.
There's some pretty good ones, but there's also a lot of remakes that just try to cash in on the old stuff. I like some of the Japanese horror stuff, and I think the storytelling is sometimes lost because people are just going for gore and special effects.
Maybe I'm not being very specific in my case, however. In order to dig deeper into this horror predicament, I decided to ask about opinions on character tropes.
Then you got the cliche jock, the idiot blonde. Then you got the one intelligent or a couple intelligent guys.
Well, I see the couple that usually sneaks off to go have sex somewhere, and I see the black guy that usually gets killed off. There's the sensible one.
Well, there's actually a whole study on horror movies and the characters, and you can actually take you can do your entire college thesis on this. But horror movies usually have this brunette who's usually the virgin that is more powerful and a little bit more independent. You have usually the minority or gay person who is a person that usually gets killed. There's usually a guy saves the female. Most of the time, the killers are not females; they're actually males. So these are very predictable in horror movies.
The problem with using these tropes is the more you use these characteristics, a character will lose his personality. Because of this, most characters seem to be just driven by a single emotion. But one of the final and biggest gripes I have with modern horror is the way they try to scare their audience. Most of their methods are cheap and gimmicky.
I guess, like stuff like, I guess there's gore, right? People just want you to go, oh, it's so gross, which is kind of cheap. There's also just the things jumping out of you out of nowhere, which is also kind of cheap. I think the best one is, a movie that leaves you suspenseful because you don't know what exactly is going to happen and where it's going to come from.
A lot of jump scares. The music definitely.
A lot of what's it called? The jump scares. Is that a mechanic? That's not a mechanic. Yeah. Okay. That.
Ultimate cliche is a pop-up scare, and then there's that deep in sync look that leads into the jump scare, or there's you see somebody, you turn around, then look back, and then they're gone all of a sudden, or it's the random and just curious noise that you hear in the background, or the kind of the plot twist that's oh, the butler actually did it. He's the killer. Like one of those.
Well, the entire genre of horror is based on camera work and sound. I think the best horror movies are things that don't actually show, but actually use camera work the way to kind of have those surprise tactics.
Throughout all of these interviews, I noticed one single trope that kept coming into mind. One of the cheapest and infuriating scare tactics would have to go to the jump scare. The jump scare. A jump scare is like what just happened. Something pops out and goes boo unexpectedly and jolts the audience.
Kind of corny. I mean, I could do that to you in the hallway. I could just stand there in the corner and go boom.
It's not that I hate jump scares, just that you don't need a jump scare to make a good horror movie. You don't need it.
They can be fun. It depends on exactly what is causing the jump scare and how frequent it is.
They always make me piss my pants. I shouldn't say piss on an interview, right?
I'm a fanatic of jump scares, like just popping up and you start screaming, but it's just, I love the thrill.
Well, jump scares is a classic. That's what you want in a horror movie, unless it's a little bit more psychological. But the problem is, I think nowadays, is that movies are being based on only jump scares, and something like Paranormal Activity, the framework of the movie is really bad because they're only going for jump scares instead of actually developing the story, which I like.
This is another thing I didn't expect while interviewing. There are actually people that like jump scares. But this is something that's been coming up throughout all of these interviews. Some people actually like the way horror's been going, whereas others agree with me and hate it. There have been a multitude of opinions on this matter, and maybe it's a good thing that we all have different opinions on this. But at the end of the day, despite all of our opinions, there are many amazing and terrifying movies out there thanks to the creative minds of the few. My only one personal wish was that creators would put more effort and creativity into their films, rather than hashing out the same movie every summer.
I'd say the best thing that someone could probably do is just introduce a new concept. I mean, we always see the murderer, we always see the demon, the doll. Honestly, you just need something that is fresh, but also keeps what people are used to seeing at the same time.
Be original. Be original. Don't overthink your movie. Try to keep it start from the basics and then see what you can add on afterwards.
I don't know. How can you make horror better? As long as it keeps scaring you, it's good.
I think, well, I don't think I have anything to change. I like the way horror movies are now. You know, the way the movie looks, the more shots that they have, the more audio that they have, it makes the movie more interesting.
But who knows? Horror's changed in the past, and it's bound to change again.